The Secretary is with us this morning to discuss how the United States is working closely with our partners in the Middle East and North Africa to repatriate American citizens from overseas and to lead the global fight against the coronavirus. The Secretary will begin with a few brief remarks, and then we'll turn it over for questions. Secretary Pompeo.
Great. Thanks, Morgan. Thank you all for joining me. I appreciate it. Look forward to our conversation. A few thoughts to get us started today. First, with respect to the global pandemic. It's been a bit, but as I said back in Cairo, America is a force for good. I'd like your readers to have a better understanding of how we've provided and continue to provide humanitarian assistance to the people all across the Middle East and North Africa. It's an all-of-America approach. It's bilateral government aid in the sense that the U.S. has announced more than $500 million in foreign assistance to fight the virus for more than 100 countries worldwide, including $79 million for the Middle East and North Africa. Bilateral. It's our multilateral organization assistance. We provide UNHCR approximately $22.6 million to support its COVID-19 response in Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and Yemen. In Syria, UNICEF is using part of the $20+ million USAID has given to fight the virus in at-risk countries on used mostly to improve surveillance capacity, but also increase contact tracing and bolstering public education campaigns as well. And it means also, when we talk about all of America sharing our expertise, the CDC support is broad throughout the region. CDC in Iraq has trained over 40 medical epidemiologists to identify and contain outbreaks like COVID. And you have amazing American businesses, NGOs, charities, faith groups at work as well, trying to help arrest the pandemic. A good example is a company called West Point Home, an American linen manufacturer that repurposed its factory in Bahrain to produce and donate reusable face masks that go to the frontline healthcare workers in Bahrain, coming to the United States and going elsewhere in the Middle East as well. It's an example of the kind of thing we're doing all across the Middle East. We also help countries, even when they are governed by regimes that threaten the United States and the world. We have an open channel for humanitarian aid to the Iranian people that we've kept open while simultaneously executing our maximum pressure campaign. The U.S. government is working with the United Nations NGOs as well to deliver COVID-19 related support, medicine, and food to nearly every part of Syria, including the regime-held areas. One more item to note. Our diligent work here at the State Department to achieve nationwide ceasefires in the conflicts in Syria, Libya, and Yemen continues. We have to concentrate our efforts on fighting the virus, not on killing in each of those places. There's no one who believes a military solution will resolve them, and that such pursuits will only continue to exacerbate the spread of the virus to epic proportions, endangering the health of entire populations. Well, I want to wish everyone a very, very, very happy Ramadan Mubarak. We know that this year community gatherings for the breaking of the fast and worship will not happen as normal during this holy month of Ramadan. We encourage countries in the region to continue adhering to social distancing principles as we work together to support global health and safety. And with that, happy to take questions on these subjects and any others. China, the World Health Organization, whatever you all want to talk about. Morgan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Now we'll turn it over to questions. We're going to begin from Ashaq Al-Assad, Najul Hubu.
Yes, thank you, Morgan. Thank you, Secretary Pompeo. I think you mentioned the WHO, and a lot of the countries in the region rely on the WHO expertise. They work very closely with their epidemiologists, especially in North Africa. We've got their office in Cairo has been doing a lot of work, Iraq as well. So just wondering how the American administration cutting the funding to the WHO is going to affect this sort of help. And could you please tell us a bit more about how the U.S. is going to cut the funding? Is it this year's funding? Is it next year's? Is it already done? Is it going to be done later this year? Thank you.
Well, I appreciate the question. There is no country in the world that is as generous with respect to global health and countering epidemics as the United States of America. Not one, not any. That was the case last year. It's the case today. It'll be the case tomorrow as well. So I think that's the first point. There's been some who said, well, the United States is cutting and running from its traditions of supporting global health. That is false, patently false. Second, when we provide taxpayer dollars, every country has a responsibility to make sure those dollars are used in a way that actually delivers on the outcomes. I don't think there's anyone who believes that the World Health Organization has shined in its ability to have responded and notify the world of the virus that originated in Wuhan, China. They were slow. They refused to call a global health pandemic. They rejected closing down international travel when the United States made clear that we thought this was the best path forward. We began to close down our international travel. They said, well, that's a bad idea. I think the whole world now knows, as you can see from the actions of hundreds of countries that have attempted to slow the spread of the virus through making sure there was less travel, less movement so they could get their hands around this. When you have an institution that has failed and continues to fail in spite of the massive reforms that took place after SARS, you all will remember this. This isn't the first time that the global health system, the international health rules, have failed to protect the world. We did massive reforms, and we're still in this same place. It is worthy of evaluating whether delivery of resources to that institution will deliver the outcomes that people are looking for. And then the final piece is, as you mentioned, the WHO also, it has a regulatory component that I just talked about. It has a technical component too, where it provides assistance. Where appropriate, the United States will continue to make sure that resources get to the professionals, the technical people. I talked about the work that our CDC does on the ground. No country has as many health officials spread around the world trying to deliver good outcomes. We will continue to do that. We will continue to support it. We'll do it bilaterally. We'll do it through global NGO systems. But the World Health Organization has to be evaluated. We have to review it, and we have to make sure that this entity, where the United States spends $500 million, we're the largest donor by far to the World Health Organization, is actually delivering on its stated purpose, on its stated mission, in a way that will actually deliver decreased health risk to the world. It's sending money and announcing through Twitter various actions is interesting. What matters is, are you able to achieve the outcomes that the people all across the world demand? And I think we can see that the World Health Organization has fallen short of that. And I think every country, I think I saw Chancellor Merkel yesterday say, we really need to investigate what happened here so we can understand how this virus that began in Wuhan, China, spread into the challenge we have today, the tragedy of the loss of life and suffering that's taking place, as well as the economic harm that's been done to nearly every country in the world.
Great. Thank you so much. Now we're going to go to Arab News. We'll have Faisal Abbas.
Thank you. Morning, Morgan. Good morning, Mr. Secretary.
Yes, sir. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you. So my question is twofold, actually. The first is, this is obviously having a toll on the energy markets, with some news channels are repeating that the President of the United States is considering halting importing Saudi oil as a result of the impact COVID is having on the energy market. So I was firstly wondering if there was any comment or update on that from your part. And since you mentioned maximum pressure on Iran, as you know, Your Excellency, you mentioned about 3 weeks ago that the U.S. could rethink sanctions in light of the coronavirus pandemic on Iran. How does that kind of correlate with the President's comments today about taking action against gunships that intimidate the U.S. Navy in the Gulf?
Good. Two good questions. First, I'll take your second one with respect to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Look, the President's statement this morning made clear that we will not tolerate putting our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines at risk, that we're going to defend ourselves. Those ships that violated international law and came too close to our vessels were operating in international waterways. And the President, I think, has always made clear that we will do everything we need to do to make sure that our forces are as safe and secure as we can possibly make them. As for the maximum pressure campaign, right, we have a economic component, we have a diplomatic component, where we build out coalitions all across the world to convince the Iranian regime to change the nature of their behavior, and that requirement to keep the world free from terrorism. Right? We saw Foreign Minister Zarif travel to Damascus yesterday. So while they are telling the world that they are broke and don't have any money, they continue to underwrite the butcherous activities of the Assad regime. When they say they don't have any money to feed their people and provide medicine for their people, they continue to launch missiles and attempt to put satellites into orbit. This is about prioritization for the regime. There are plenty of resources there, and so long as they have the resources to take care of their own people, the world should demand that the regime do that. We have also, in that same vein, made clear that the humanitarian channels into Iran to provide food and medicine are still there. They are not sanctioned activities. There's been successful transfers of those resources. So we are doing both things at the same time. We're ensuring that the Iranian people have the humanitarian assistance they need to do what they need to do to respond to this virus. And second, we are continuing to put pressure on the regime to stop the process of continuing to build out their terror campaign all across the world. And with respect to the missile system, continue to develop a missile program that can ultimately deliver medium and long-range missiles that one day could find a nuclear warhead on top of them, something that the Iranian regime has said that they wouldn't do, but you can see by the work they're putting into their missile program just this past week, they continue their efforts in that vein. That's why we think UN Security Council 2231 needs to be enforced vigorously. Your question about the energy markets, I don't want to get in front of what the president may decide, but we've seen a historic decline in demand. We've got to get the world's economy back open. When that demand comes back, you'll see demand for crude oil products all across the world, American crude oil products that come from Saudi Arabia and elsewhere. That's the thing that the president is truly focused on. He also wants to make sure that the American energy network that has built up, that has done so much good for America and the world, continues to be in a position that when global demand comes back, it's still there, thriving and succeeding, delivering for the American people as well. Those are the two things that we're focused on in the energy markets. These are historic times there as well. When you see the front trade on West Texas Intermediate go to minus $37 a barrel, you realize the enormous and swift decline in demand and the challenges that has created. We are working not only here inside the United States, but with our partners all across the world to try and put in place systems that will lead to a more stable, more rational set of energy markets.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now over to the National, Joyce Karam.
Yes, hi, good morning.
Hello, Joyce.
How are you? Belated Happy Easter to you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Everyone is safe. I have two quick questions. The first, I'm not sure if you followed the WHO comments yesterday saying that all available evidence suggests the virus originated in animals in China and not in a lab. Does that match, the U.S. assessment or what you're doing? And I mean, how do you evaluate this statement? And a quick follow-up on Iran. In light of President Trump's tweet, how far is the U.S. willing to go in ensuring deterrence without risking an open conflict with Tehran?
I appreciate both questions. The second one, not much to add, but make no mistake about it, the actions that the United States has taken over the past many months have been designed to provide a deterrent effect. I'll give you examples. So the work that we have done in the Arabian Gulf there with our international task force designed to track ships transiting there to protect those ships. You recall, it seems like a while back, you'll recall that the Iranians attacked many, many vessels there. We have put in place systems to monitor and observe such that we take down that risk, that we deter. We increased our force posture in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, same mission set. After the September attacks in Saudi Arabia on missiles that came out of Iran, the United States began to work with our partners in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to deliver better air defense systems that are, again, designed to deter. The work that we're doing to try and bring peace and stability to Yemen, to bring a ceasefire, again, is aimed at deterring Iranian aggression, Iranian missile systems that have been brought into Iran. The work that we do in Iraq today, same thing. So the United States is committed to deterring Iranian aggression throughout the Middle East, and more broadly, the risk that Iran presents to the United States of America. Your first question was about the origination of the virus, and comments that suggested from the World Health Organization suggested this came from animals. Here's what we can say for sure. This virus originated in China. When they suggested through their disinformation campaigns that it began in Europe or was brought there by U.S. soldiers, that is dangerous. This isn't political. This is dangerous. You have to know the nature and the pathway that the virus took in order to save lives. And that didn't happen. They were too slow. That information didn't get to the world quickly enough. The World Health Organization didn't demand it, and the Chinese Communist Party didn't deliver it. The precise origination, we continue to investigate. Chancellor Merkel called for an investigation of this too. Prime Minister Morrison has made clear. The whole world wants to know where this came from and how it got to the place where this virus could spread in this way. This isn't only about accountability. There will be a day for accountability. That will prove important too. But this is ongoing. These labs in China, it's not just the WIV, it's not just the Wuhan Institute of Virology. There are multiple labs where the Chinese Communist Party is working on various levels of pathogens. Those labs are still open. The world has not been permitted to go into those labs to evaluate the security and their capacity to protect those objects being studied from being released. Just as we do in nuclear assurance, just as we do in lots of fields of the world, it's important that there be a global effort to ensure that those people who are working with dangerous substances have the capability to prevent accidental release. And so we still haven't had access. We, collectively, the world still has not had access to the Chinese labs. We think that will ultimately prove important for us to be able to figure out the answer to the question you presented. And we think getting the answer to that question you presented is very important, not just as a historical matter, but so that we can prevent such a thing from happening again, and we can address the ongoing challenges, that is, we can begin to understand the existing virus in a way that will save lives as we move forward in the days and weeks ahead. The world is still suffering from this pandemic, and it is time that there be transparency and access such that the world can evaluate this risk and respond to it appropriately based on good science and good, clean information.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm now moving over to Haaretz. Gaudi Taub.
Yeah, Gadi Taub from Tel Aviv. Hi, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for your time. Hello?
Yes, Gaudi, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Gaudi, thank you. Thanks for joining me.
Is it likely in your estimate that China will try something like a Marshall Plan for Europe at the end of this crisis? And if so, what impact will that have on U.S. policy and geopolitically in general?
Well, look, we always encourage nations that have resources that find other countries that are having trouble. That we want countries to be generous. We often lead the effort in the world to develop donor nation conferences that actually deliver good outcomes for people around the world. So we encourage every country to the extent they can. The United States has always done this. We will be a donor nation for ventilators and for PPE. We will work diligently to make sure that not only our aid, but our private sector companies and the work that we'll do on the vaccine here, frankly, with Israeli companies as well, the work that we will do with European companies to develop therapeutics, that's all very, very important. And we'd encourage every country, China to actively do that. But it's important. It's important when you think about something like the Marshall Plan, or you think about assistance that's provided. When the United States provides assistance, we do it because it's a humanitarian good. We don't tie strings to it. We don't pressure countries. We don't connect the aid to statements that countries will make. We don't extort actions from them. We don't hold up that humanitarian assistance based on what the country may do. We do it because it's the right thing to do for the people of that country. You can see that. You can see that in what we're doing in places like North Korea and in Syria or Assad regime-controlled places in Syria and in Iran. This isn't about getting policy outcomes that are consistent with what the United States wants. We do it because it's the right thing for those people. And so every country that does that, if China chooses to step up and do that, that's good for them, good for the world, but they need to do so in a way. We don't sell them products. This is humanitarian assistance, and it's designed solely for the benefit of the people who are the recipients there. It's truly charitable activity, not activity that is aimed at furthering national purposes in the way that some countries have done with respect to responding to this coronavirus.
Thank you, Gowdy. Appreciate that. We're now going over to An-Nahar newspaper. We have Rosanna Balmuntaf.
Good morning, Mr. Secretary. Thank
Hello.
you for this opportunity.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
It's clear that the United States has exceeded political criteria for assistance to the many countries of the region. So what is the single most important message from this approach, first of all? And then, excuse me for this question, it's about only Lebanon. And today, the American ambassador in Beirut announced $13.3 million in aid for Lebanon, bearing in mind your reservations about the Lebanese government and sanctions policy towards Hezbollah, which in turn announced its good management of the corona crisis. Can this aid be considered a separate path for your traditional relationship, or is it that after corona we can expect a more flexible American approach to Lebanon and other countries too?
Well, thank you. Let me take the second one, the specific Lebanon question. I didn't see the announcement that she made today. I assume it was an announcement with respect to the assistance that we're going to provide there. That assistance is entirely consistent with how we have approached Lebanon and, frankly, the greater challenges in the Middle East. What we have asked in Lebanon is that the Lebanese government respect the will of the Lebanese people. And the humanitarian assistance there is designed to assist the Lebanese people. What we've asked is the Lebanese people have gone to the streets before the virus. What they've demanded is transparency, fairness. They want the political corruption taken out of their government. And we've been consistent in saying we are prepared to support a government in Lebanon that is prepared to deliver on the outcomes that their people are demanding. It can't be the case that business as usual inside the Lebanese government continues to exist. It can't be the case that Hezbollah, a designated terrorist organization, is exerting influence in ways that adversely affect the Lebanese people. It must be the case that these central ideas, Lebanon has a long tradition of democracy. It has to be the case that democracy, that what the people are in Lebanon are demanding, is ultimately delivered upon by this next government. And when it is, the financial challenges that Lebanon faces today are something that we will take with great seriousness and great urgency, and we will not only provide our assistance, but we will do our best to make sure that other countries in the region and European countries, I talk with my French counterpart about this with some frequency, we will be there to support the Lebanese people when there is a government and a leadership that is prepared to deliver on the things that the Lebanese people are demanding. And I'm sorry, if you could repeat your first question, I didn't quite track it.
It's about your surmounting political criteria for assistance to many to many countries in the region, like Syria, for instance. And it's what's the message from this approach?
Well, the assistance that we've provided in Syria, we've provided more assistance in Syria than any other country in the world, and we have done so in a way that has two components to it. One is the one we've been talking about a lot today, which is we have worked in spite of Syrian leadership opposition, in spite of, frankly, Russian opposition. We have worked to get food assistance and medicine into Syria. We wanted multiple axes to move in from Turkey. The Russians at the UN Security Council denied that. We think more assistance is needed, and we want to make sure that the United States is at the forefront of continuing to work to provide that. But second, we've made clear that the only path forward in Syria is the UN Security Council Resolution 2254. that political process must be engaged in. When that happens, the entire world, not just the United States, the entire world will help the Syrian people rebuild their country. But it can't be the case that until the Syrian regime decides that it's prepared to enter into that conversation in a serious way. They've made some progress over the last 6 months, but there's much more to be done. When they engage in that political process, it is then and only then that the world will have the capacity to come in and provide the rebuilding and reconstruction that the people of Syria, all across Syria, not just in Damascus, but in Aleppo and in Idlib and all across the region, that the people of that country so richly deserve. We're prepared to do that. We're prepared to be a part of it with other countries, but it's going to take leadership that is prepared to stop fighting, stop killing, and enter into a political process. That's how we think about that in each of these countries, whether it's in Iraq or in Syria.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Now we're going to go over to Al Ahram, Susie El Ghanedi.
Yes, hi. Happy Easter, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you.
Thank you. How will the coronavirus problem affect the U.S. relations with its strategic allies like Egypt, for instance, and the need to cooperate internationally to combat the challenges posed by corona? And is there a deadline for the investigation, the U.S. investigation on the source of the coronavirus to be revealed?
Well, it's your second question. The deadline is it needed to happen already, and so this is urgent. Having the ability to understand how this came to be, precisely from where this virus emanated, is important for the healthcare and health officials and epidemiologists and scientists who are trying to figure out how to address this issue. And so, no, there's not a deadline. It needs to happen urgently. And we demand this of every country. We want them to be transparent. We want them to be open. If you're going to be a country that wants to be part of civilized society, that wants to be part of the world's network of countries that are working to cooperatively deliver on good outcomes for the world, you have to be prepared to be open and transparent. It's what happens in democracies. And Chinese Communist Party talks about wanting to cooperate. A central tenet of cooperation is your capacity to share information and to be open, and we hope that can happen. As for how the virus has impacted our relationships, you mentioned Egypt in particular, and look, every country has had to take some of their energy and some of their time of their country's leadership and their people and focus on protecting their own people from this virus. We've certainly seen that here in the United States, but it's true for every country. That means there are fewer resources available to do other things, but I've been incredibly impressed by Egypt, by other countries in the Middle East, of their ability to continue in the face of these challenges, both the health challenge and the challenge presented by the tragic loss of life, but also the challenge to their nation's economies, the ability of their people to work and to generate wealth and to take care of their own people, their own families. I've been very impressed by their ability to keep their eye on the ball of the national security challenges all around the world. We still have conversations. We often begin them by talking about the virus, but we often spend a great deal of time continuing to work problem sets all around the region in the Middle East.
Great. Thank you so much. And our final question is from Channel 12 News Israel, Dana Weiss.
Yes, thank you so much for hosting this roundtable. I wanted to ask you how you see the coronavirus affecting the attitude and administration's policy toward Iran. I know that they wanted the sanctions relief in order for them to better prepare for the virus. And also, if I could ask, I don't know if this is okay, but we are on the brink of forming a unity government, an emergency government in Israel around the battling the coronavirus. And among the guidelines are a promise or an intent to annex territories in the West Bank and in Israel with coordination with the United States, and they state July as the date. So if you could say something about that, that would be great also.
Yes, Dana, first of all, thank you. Thanks for joining me today. Look, I don't want to say much about your second question. We were pleased that The Israeli people now have a government that has been formed and will move forward. We've studied closely the agreement between the two leaders, and we look forward to working with the Israeli government. There are many things that we work on alongside each other, not the least of which is a lot of the science around this virus and how we're going to generate therapeutics and vaccines. We're pleased that there won't be a fourth election in Israel. We think this is a good outcome for Israel, for the region, and for the world. So we're happy about that. As for Iran, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Iran has been hit with the coronavirus, as has nearly every nation around the world, and we immediately responded by offering U.S. direct humanitarian assistance and technical support to the Iranian leadership so that they could begin to address this for their people. They rejected that. We continue to offer that, and we have alongside of that work to help other countries around the world be able to deliver these goods into Iran to take care of the Iranian people. It's the right thing to do. We will continue to work on that, and we've had some success, and I'm confident we will have more in the days and weeks ahead. But as with Israel, as with every country, the first responsibility for taking care of their own people falls to the leadership of that country. And the regime has shown their disdain for their own people. While this is going on, they continue to underwrite Shia militias in Iraq. They continue to have their foreign minister travel to provide Iranian support for the Assad regime in Damascus and throughout Syria. They continue to ship hardware and equipment to the Houthis in Yemen. They continue to develop their missile program, as we can see from the activities of the last 48 hours. And you can see they continue to send their IRGC Navy out to harass nations that have their ships transiting in international waterways. They clearly have resources, and they have resources to take care of their own people, and they ought to prioritize the health and welfare of their own people over their desire to conduct terror campaigns around the world. We're going to continue to do what we can to deny the regime the money and wealth to build out those programs. In that respect, nothing has changed. I think the whole world can now see plainly that the leadership, the Ayatollah and the leadership inside of Iran have wealth, have resources, have the capacity to take care of their own people, and they ought to direct their time, attention, focus, and resources to performing that imperative for every government, to take care of the health, safety, welfare, and security of their own people.